All right, welcome to our second module now. Looks like we finished the first module of fundamentals on Saturday. Now we're on week 7, day 1, starting a whole new module called the web. This is going to be a lot of front-end work here, intro to front-end work, because ultimately we will be using React for front end, but to build to that, we need to know the basics. So today's lesson, we're going to be looking into HTML and CSS. So has anybody had experience with HTML and CSS?
I use
See,
HTML in a video game, if that means anything.
it does. It does. I mean, that works. Any sort of experience is already being familiar with HTML. I'll take it because it doesn't really change much once you learn it. Um, any Let's see, what about CSS? How are we with CSS? Have we had intro to that, maybe? And if you all are super confused about HTML, CSS, that's okay too. So we'll talk about it. What is HTML? So behind every web page in your browser, there is a code base that instructs this browser how to display this page. And all of it is done using HTML. It's a way to tell this browser how to go ahead and render everything on the screen. Um, it stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is not programming in its pure sense, and we'll see that when we start kind of digging around in how to write in HTML. Um, and it may look easy at first, but it is not easy because there's a lot of things to memorize and a lot of differences between browsers. Like they can use the HTML markup in different ways than you would expect. So opening this page here in Chrome is might look a little different than opening it in Firefox or some of the other browsers you might use. Um, so it's not always a one for one. Um, let's see a little bit. So we'll just walk through this here. Okay, so we're going to be going from the README and kind of bouncing back and forth between this and then getting hands-on online as well. So if you want to follow along, you can open up to week 7, day 1, and I'm going to open up VS Code. So the first thing it's saying is let's touch. What is touch? A new file.
Make new file.
Yes, exactly. That's our Linux command there. Touch a new file called index.html. Why would I name it index.html? Does it matter? Can I name it anything? So index.html is usually what a website is going to look at as the base HTML code. That's where he's going to go first to find the code. It's called index. So I would have to look up if it's a standardization or if it's actually built-in sort of feature that but that is what we use across the board, usually as a starting point for our HTML files. So I've already got an HTML file made here. I went ahead and made that in my VS Code, our index.html. Let's go ahead and just throw in a hello world. In order to put that in HTML, you can see kind of prompts us a little bit here with these, uh, what are those? I don't even know what those are called. Uh, but it's showing we need something around our HTML that we call a tag. So I'm putting in hello world here, and we can see I've wrapped it in these two tags. So the beginning here is an opening tag, and the end is a closing tag. And you can see it has the little slash there to reference that it's a closing tag. All HTML has these tags. That is how we signify what we're doing in our HTML document with this text. Each tag stands for something different. H1 is a header tag. I believe it's the largest size header tag that you can use. You can also use H2, H3, but there are millions of tags. Well, not millions. There's lots of tags you can use in HTML, and all of them do something slightly different that we'll see in a second. But each tag usually in most cases, have an opening and a closing to the tag. So we can see we have our opening and closing for this header, and what's in between those tags is the content. And these tags express that content in different ways. So I want to see how this looks on a web page, basically in the browser. I want to use a browser to render this and look at it. And VS Code actually has some really cool built-in features you can use for this. I think it's an extension, or it might be built in. I can't remember if it's built in with all or if you have to add it as an extension, but we're using something called Live Server. So if when I'm going through this next step, you aren't able to do the same things I'm able to do, look up in your extensions, Live Server, and go ahead and install that. But what that lets me do is I can right click on this and I can open this file, this HTML file with Live Server. So when I do that, you can see mine doesn't open automatically in the browser. It prompts me down here. It says it's running on this port. So this is going to be on localhost. So if you at least catch the port number and you accidentally close out of this, you can always navigate to it in your browser directly. But it's going to be localhost and then the port's 5500. We're going to take a look here. So when I open the page, this is what I get. We can see localhost and 55:5500 for the port number. So this is what I've got going on in this HTML. We can see this is pretty big text, kind of bolded, definitely looks like a header or a heading, sorry. So let's try doing something different with this now using a different tag and see how that works with the HTML or the way the web browser displays this. So let me bring back up this. Now we're going to use something called an M tag. This stands for emphasis. And again, I'll give you some like resources to show you all the different tags you can use. There are definitely a few you will use a bit more than others and you'll start memorizing them. If you have, let's see, so mine is not automatically updating here, and we'll see why in a second, but I've changed it over here. I want to see it in the browser now. I've got this live server going on though, so it's up and running. All I have to do is refresh the page. We can see on the bottom, it tells me why it's not just showing up automatically. It says it's not possible without a head or a body tag. And you will look a little more into that next class when you talk about the DOM and how you lay out your HTML pages and how to structure it. But for this class, we're just going to kind of focus on how HTML works, like the tags, what they're doing, and some CSS, basic CSS styling too. Basically just an intro day. But I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. I understand. Don't show me again. So anytime I make a change here, if I want to see it in my browser, I'll just have to refresh for now. But we can see these look completely different, right? I've got the same exact content, but different tags are wrapping around it. So it does different things to the content in the browser based on how the browser is reading this HTML file. So Chrome has said that for H1 tags, I'm going to make it look exactly like this. And for emphasis tags, I'm going to make it look exactly like that. And that changes per browser. Most of the time it's very similar, but it can change slightly. So that's what I mean. If I open in Firefox, it might look a tiny bit different from this. but just something to think about. Um, yes, Art, question.
You know what I found really interesting when you're building websites is that you have to be very conscious about how it's going to look on mobile. It seems like a majority of no, I wouldn't even say a majority, but I would say a large portion of users are going to their phone to look at websites versus actually being on a computer. So, are we going to touch upon the mobile format in Code Platoon?
I can show you some things to look at the mobile formatting, and how that's going to look, but we will touch on some CSS basics that will help it scale between the browser and a mobile, browser. So like Flex is a commonly used, CSS styling that allows it to kind of grow and shrink according to the space you have to view it on. But I will illustrate how you can at least look at it. We're not going to tell you exactly how to develop for mobile specifically, but I can show you how you can see at least how it would look on the mobile based on how you've used your CSS styling. Um, so that is where you have differences between making a web page and your mobile is how you style it with CSS, if that makes sense.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, cool. So right now I've got just a couple of tags hanging out here. We're also going to show that you can have parent and children in HTML. So in the README, we see they have this div. We can tell it's an opening tag and a closing tag because it's the same thing, but the end here has that little slash, so we know it's closing out, the tag. This is the content in between, which the content happens to be another tag system here using heading. But this is the parent, element here, and then this indented in between it is the child element. And this is more structure you'll see tomorrow. Just kind of getting you aware that we can have just things thrown in a line, together, but we can also have nested, within parent elements. We can have some child elements as well. We can have a few different things in here. So in this, like it said in this one, the div is the parent, header or heading is the, child. This is paragraph. This is another commonly used one you'll see a lot. Paragraph is also another child element within this parent. And let's refresh it and see how it's going. All right, there you go. Doesn't indent the text or anything. It just is how this is going to be structured in the DOM. Um, so again, I'm trying not to go into that too deep because that's tomorrow and Thursday. Okay, so next up, when looking at HTML, it's also important to note that there are different types, uh, different ways in how these are displayed. So we have two different types of elements. We have block elements and we have inline elements. So let's take a look at an example illustrating the difference between a block element. So a block element is one that is going to take up the entirety of the viewing window you're looking at. So it will pretty much take up this whole space here all the way over. And an inline element is going to be just the individual element here, and they can stack up next to each other because it doesn't take up the whole space of the browser window. So some um, common examples of like block elements are, of course, headings. And how can I tell this might be a block element? Like I can't see how far over this is spanning. But I'm gonna do an experiment here before I show you the official way on how to look at what these are. I'm gonna say I have heading one. And then underneath that, I'm gonna say we have heading two. Okay. And then, so a common example of an inline element is a span. It doesn't really, it's just kind of a placeholder element. Span doesn't mean anything. It's just making it inline, basically, kind of like div. Div is a block element. Doesn't really mean anything. It just kind of forms a structure, a block structure around whatever you're wrapping it in. Um, Along with span, you also have like links, which, contrary to what you think, a link is actually an A tag. Doesn't seem like it would match that. What are some other ones? There's also uh, like bold or italicizing items. Those are inline as well. They're not going to expand across the whole thing. I'm going to do a span just so we can throw, like, we can see how this is working. Let's do inline text 1. And then I'm gonna again enter down and do inline text 2. So how do you think this is going to present on my page? If I said block elements, which headings are block elements span the entire view of the browser. And inline elements only take up what space they exist in. They don't go the entirety of the browser. They just, where their element ends, they will end as well.
Yep. So yeah, the two headings will take up the whole width of the page. Basically, it's yeah, for headings or block elements, you can consider them having a new line character after them, I guess, in the sense. But then the two spans will be side by side.
Oh, they'll be side by side. They won't be one, but I've entered down.
No, yeah, they'll be side by side.
Okay, well, let's see. You are correct. Yes, that is the difference between block and inline. So even though I've made an enter here, it doesn't actually count because these are not block elements. They don't go across the whole thing. They're going to take up just what their content takes up and then move to the next inline element if it can. If I had a block element after this, then yes, that would come down on the next line because it takes up the whole space, right? There's no room after heading to fit anything else because it takes up the whole space. And that's why it's a block element. And how we can check this out is there's a handy tool in our browsers. When you right click, you come down somewhere in your list of right click, there's an inspect button. And you're going to use this a lot when looking at your own sites when you're making them. I'm going to go ahead and do it on top of an element. And when you right click on top of an element and inspect, it's going to take you, I'm going to make this big now, to what I had my cursor over. So it highlighted this heading 1. We can see this is what I've typed out in VS Code exactly. And I can see it here in my browser as well. And I can hover over each element and we can see that these block elements, that expands the whole way across the browser for both of these. And when I hover over the inline elements, it's just the individual inline texts. It doesn't go all the way across. So this is a really cool tool to kind of see how everything sits in your HTML document. We can see I don't have a body in my VS Code, but this did throw a body around and a head up here. And HTML also wrapping everything. So the parent is the HTML, then we come down to the children, we have a head, a body, and then underneath the body we have children of headers and spans. This will be tomorrow's class, but this is what it's talking about. It can't render this live without wrapping in a body element. Okay, so let's keep moving along. Any questions on right-clicking and looking at your tools over here? We're going to look at more of this inspect tool in a little bit, but at least just coming in and seeing the HTML. You can click around and collapse things. If I had more nested underneath here, I'd be able to expand and look at those child elements or collapse. So yeah, pretty handy. Okay, so that goes with the display types. There is in the middle, I'm not going to interrupt lecture to do this. I'm going to have y'all do it afterwards. But it has individual discovery segments in this lecture. So this link here will show you a lot of different tags you can use in your HTML document. And it also wants you to right click and inspect some things on your own. There's some really weird tags. Just kind of mess around and get familiar with your tags. Most of the time, we're going to be using paragraph. That's a really common one. Div is a really common one. Headers are really common. List items. Lists are really common as well. But you can also Google some of the more common ones. But that will be for you in your own time to kind of play around and look at different tags. Tomorrow, you will see a lot of the ones you will use repetitively. Okay, so now we're going to move on to CSS. So this is boring. And if you keep writing in HTML, paragraph text, it's just going to keep throwing it one right after another, all on the very left-hand side, and then just this plain black text. There is no styling here. Every web page begins looking like this. So if I took away all styling on like Google, all you'd see is every single one of these, like all of this content, this text content would look like this, just all in a row. CSS is what actually does all this style design, making everything look really pretty, changing font types, changing colors, all that sort of stuff. It's a lot to work with and can be overwhelming at times, but we will just touch on the basics and y'all will feel free to play with it more in your own time. So there's a couple different ways we can use CSS with our HTML page. One of the most easiest ways to use it is directly inline. So when we say inline, it's kind of like it's right here in the HTML. Adam, question.
What do you know what CSS stands for?
Cascading style sheets.
And is it the same syntax as HTML?
No, it is not. And we will be looking at that in a second here. So we can put it in our HTML though. So that's the easiest way to use CSS is just throwing it right in our HTML page. And to do that, we would add something, we'd add, what do we call this? Not a parameter. I'd have to Google what this is actually called. But we'd add this, we'll say parameter for now. See, styling declaration, I guess. Right now I'm going to say I'm going to add a style to this tag. Okay, I've done it right in this opening tag here. I'll put style, but it needs to have a value. So I'm saying the style, I want to make this heading red. So for this style color, I'm going to make it red. And what does this look like to us? This color colon red. Kind of resembles some.
Changing
Yeah.
text color?
Oh, sorry. It is.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it is changing the text color, but what kind of structure does this kind of mimic?
It looks like a dictionary.
Yeah, looks like a dictionary. So CSS is going to be a lot of basically key value pairs, in a sense. So I've said here that I want the color and its value to be red. And I've done this right in this opening tag here by using this style declaration. So let's go ahead and refresh that, and we can see it applied red to our heading there. Perfect. This is a good way to get a hang of CSS initially, but it is not a good way to actually build out your website. You don't want to throw a ton of inline styles in here. So most of the time you're going to be using something called a style sheet. So I'm going to remove this completely, and we're just going to go with the README so we don't get confused. First things first, we can create an internal style sheet. And what that means is so this is the structure we kind of saw here, right? We have HTML tags starting, then we have a head tag here up at the top, and then we have a body tag that's in the same line as the head tag below it. But so in the head tag, we have this style tag. So the head is where we put a lot of the basically configuration for the page. It's going to be where we put our styles and our scripts when we start integrating JavaScript as well. But here we have an internal style sheet where we put our style tags, and then we're telling, so what, this is kind of weird. We'll look at that in a second. This P looks familiar, but I don't know what that's doing yet. But we do see color red. So we know this is a CSS style that we're familiar with. We used it inline before, so we know this is saying something's going to be red. When we come down to the body, we can see we have a P tag down here for our paragraph tag. So what do we think this style sheet is saying? What do we think the style sheet is telling our browser to do?
To format it in that way?
Format what? And in what way?
The website being made, and then it's gonna have a head, body, new paragraph, and then a body, I guess.
Yes, okay, so yes, it will tell it how to structure it this way, but I'm looking at this specifically, this style sheet. What is this specifically telling our browser to do?
Make text red.
Yes, it's making text red. We're almost there. What text? What text is it making red? Is it making everything red?
The paragraph text red.
Right. So you didn't know this because I didn't teach it yet, but this here, P, is telling this CSS what to target. So it is saying all paragraphs in this body, go ahead and color red. So let's refresh here, and we can see we only have one paragraph thing. But look, if I add header, this should not be red, right? Because our style sheet has said just paragraphs are going to be red. We can see perfect. Oh, and it's automatically doing it because I have it wrapped in a head. I have a head and a body. So we'd see how that was automatically updating, right?
Mhm.
Boop, it's gone. I didn't have to refresh. So that is one way to do it. Again, not very commonly used. It's good when you start learning and playing around with it because it's right here in the same file. But most of the time, you are going to see external style sheets linked. So we can see I have this styles.css file right here. I'm going to go ahead and take out this whole style thing because I'm not going to have this internal style sheet. So I don't need style tags whatsoever. Not telling anything with style here. But in the head is where we put all our configuration. And in here is where I want to say, find this other style sheet I'm going to be throwing all my CSS into and use that information for this page. So to do that, you're going to link, I don't know, a relationship, I guess. That's what it told me when I was typing it. Names a relationship with the linked document to the current document. So this link relationship, this is going to be a style sheet. That is how it's related to this page I am in right now. And then the type, and these are all attributes we have to pass into this link. The type is going to be a text CSS file. And again, this will just come with repetition because this doesn't really change ever. And if you do use a other third-party style sheet, they will give you how to link it in your head here. So that's handy. And the last thing here is an href. So this is the URL of the linked resource. Here, because we're all internal and it's on my local host and it's in the same directory, I just have to go ahead and target styles.css because it's at the same level as my current HTML page. And now it's yelling at me because when we have an opening part of our tag, we need a closing part. Now this looks different. This doesn't have a link end of the tag and then a like closing tag. It's all one thing. So this is the exception to that rule of everything needs an opening and a closing. Link does not. Link will just be all in one bracket. Are they brackets? It's going to drive me nuts that I can't think of the word these are right now. Are they? If somebody Googles them, drop it.
Yeah, they're brackets. They're just a different type of bracket.
Okay, we'll roll with bracket. I'm not sold on it yet, but I trust you. Just sounds weird. So now I'm linking this external style sheet, but nothing's changed yet because this is completely empty. I haven't put any styles in here. However, now I can do the same thing I did when I was doing it internal to the file. I can target paragraphs, and then we have to do this curly bracket. We're going to say, like, oh, I am not on the right spot on my keyboard. The color is going to be red. End curly bracket. So anything within this curly bracket is going to be applied to paragraphs. We can add some styles too. Ooh, I don't know some good styles here.
They're angle brackets, Tiffany.
They're what?
They're called angle brackets.
Oh, okay. I was like, these are definitely not angle brackets. Got it. The other ones, the triangle ones. Okay, so every different attribute we have in here that we're going to apply to this paragraph has to be separated by a semicolon. And we will see this a little bit more later, but let's see, what's another easy one if I can remember. I hate trying to set up CSS so much. We can do, I think, a text align. Yeah, let's do center. Let's put it to the center. And I'm going to enter down so it's easier to read. Spacing doesn't matter here. White space doesn't matter. It just needs your curly brackets and your semicolons afterwards. So as long as you have this structure, it will go ahead and recognize that. And look, we're not even, this HTML is its own thing, but it's pointing to the style sheet and it automatically was able to say, oh, you have a paragraph section here. And you've assigned it a color red and you've aligned the text in the center. Yes, Art, question.
You know, I've been trying to hold back this question because I know you're probably going to get to it, but this is kind of exciting. So, are we going to get into how we could maybe embed some font types so we're not using the standard type stuff?
Invent font types.
Embed font
Oh,
types.
embed. Okay, I'm like, I don't. That might be more of a self-study thing. We're gonna like teach you how to find these in third-party libraries. And also I think there's probably, let's see, what is it? Font family. You can choose different, yeah, font families here. And then you have to do something else with it. So that changed it a little bit, but yeah, it's all in CSS. You just kind of have to play around and find Make it different? A little bit. Oh, it's a paragraph, so it's not going to be quite fancy. But there's different libraries, third-party libraries. So instead of linking the style sheet to just this here, you can also link to somebody else's on the internet. So if I just wonder third party. Trying to find. Yeah, we'll go to Bootstrap. Okay, so this is a really popular third-party library. Let's come here and see what we need to do. So it looks like you probably have to install it. And then it has here, no, include via CDN. So when you only need this, let's go ahead and grab one of these. So this looks like what we were doing, right? It has a href link here. So this is pointing to where that is. It's saying it's a style sheet that we can use. So let's copy it and see. Let's put it here. Replace that whole link. Well, that didn't make it super fancy because we're just doing a paragraph here. But if you used some other features, it would probably change out. And let's see. The examples. Yeah. We'll look at this later. We'll go into this more, but you can pull style sheets in from third-party apps. Maybe list items might be cool. Let's see what it does with list items. Kind of all looks the same. So some people, I'd have to read the documentation, but some people make some really cool libraries that will already change all this into a look you like, just based on the tag you're using. So just take some searching and then you can pull in their own style sheet in your link instead. As long as it follows the example we've shown where it has a relationship that identifies it's a style sheet and has the link here to the URL. Let's go back to my style sheet, see how much it changes. Yeah, so that changed back to kind of ugly. So slight differences here, but it can be large differences. So does that answer your question on how you can use, like, we can look at different just by using font family, but then also you can find different texts by finding different third-party libraries and importing them in using their style sheets. And a lot of times they will tell you what to put in the like style here in order to get it to look how the example is. But again, that's documentation reading. So much fun. Any questions on that before I start showing how we can select maybe a little more than just paragraph?
Sorry, one thing I missed. Could you tell me what the extension was that you started off with to open up the I guess the HTML viewer?
Yeah, live server.
Thank you.
And if y'all want it to update, excuse me, automatically, just let's see. Hang on here. Hang on. I think if you just start typing HTML and then tab, nope, that didn't work. Hang on, it's something else.
Yeah, without the
It's the doc
brackets.
type. maybe.
Without the brackets, if you just type HTML and tab, it'll give you several options. There you go.
Eh,
And
that
there's
one's not filling
HTML5
enough.
as well, which is a little different. They got
I
the
want the
old X.
boilerplate. This one's,
Yeah.
oh, so we could see what's included in each. So the HTML5 would be the best one to start off with because it has its head and body, which is where you'll put all the stuff we're working with. So you just tab over and you can start using this. It's a bit. You don't need to worry about this stuff here. You can delete it out. Just head is where we place our style sheet. Body is where we're placing all of our HTML tags that we're working on. So that would be where I'd put my paragraph tag and then my style sheet link up in the head. Yeah, to refresh the first time since I changed it. I don't know. Two different HTML structure. Okay, that was a good question to make sure you can view your page. Any other questions? Ooh, look, code injected by live server. That's awesome. Oh, script. We don't have a script. No, ignore that. Okay, so the general structure of CSS, we kind of saw it here, but I'll put it down here so you can see is a selector, which is here we've used a paragraph, but the selector can change, and we will look at in a second. And then a property and a value. So the property is going to be color, text alignment, font family, all that, all that kind of stuff there, margin size, whatever. Then values, of course, easy to see. So I am wondering now, I am going to have, let's see. We're going to change this out. I'm going to make a div. I'm going to do something, I'm going to give it something called a class. And we will look at this in a second. And I'm going to name this red text. This class is going to be red text. I'm also going to give it an ID. Again, we'll look at that in a second too. And this ID I'm going to name priority box. Okay. Let's see. And then I need to close the tag, obviously. And in this, it's easier to see when you enter down. Usually block elements you will enter if you have a content in between it there. So here I'm just going to say, let's see, we're going to do CSS I got all fancy specificity test. Okay, so that's our content. Did I spell it right? Specificity. There. Okay. So I'm going to style this now. I'm going to change this. We're going to, so I don't have a paragraph now, so I can't use a P tag, but I do have a div. So I'm going to do some div styling first. We're going to say div, oh, not div. We need our curly brackets. And in the div style, I am going to do a background color of light blue. Cool. So it's already highlighted the div. Now I'm going to make a selector that's going to target this class. And I want it to have red text. So let's target the class. And to target a class, can't just type the class name. That would be too easy. Instead, you have to do a period first. That indicates I'm going to target a class when I put a period down. And so that class was called red text, right? Red text, yes. Okay, so if I make this one's background color, I don't know why I named it red text. Yeah, whatever. If I made this background color light pink, what do we think is going to happen? I'll have two background colors. I'll have one for the div and I'll have one for the class.
The light the light pink background color of red text is going to it's basically going to show. So it's going to take precedence over the div background color.
Exactly, because if we look in our README, we're going to learn that each of these things have different weights. So the stronger the weight, or the higher the weight, the greater the superiority when styling conflicts occur. So I have a conflict here with my background color, or I'm about to, but we could see that this is just a tag, a regular tag. So that that div is just a regular tag. Div only gets this 0.001 weight, but a class, which red text is a class, that has a little bit higher weight. So then if there's a conflict, that higher weight is going to take precedence. So let's go ahead and throw in light pink and see if it does, in fact. Is there? Yay, it did. It took precedence over Tom. Same thing with ID. This is the highest priority for individual priorities that you can have. To target an ID, you have to do this pound sign. So that is priority box. And with this one, we'll also try background color. And this time, what color do we want? Send on gold. So ID took precedence because it is the highest weight. However, let's see, let's do, I don't know what what is the color for the font?
Just color.
It's just color. Okay.
Mhm.
I always have to look up CSS. Let's put it to be annoying. Blue. Can't hardly tell, but we can see that even though I've got a higher priority CSS box here, or it's I don't have color in here, so this color is going to win because that's the only one specified. If I had color here, though, it would win over that. You can see it's still blue. So that is how priority works in these. It's going to find the highest weighted item and choose that property and value over the others. Any questions there? The README also shows that you can combine combined selectors to have a greater weight. So you can, these are two class names, right? Class is a dot or a period. So two class names together, then this specific item will have a weight of 0.020. So if I had a red text class in and of itself with a background color of a different color, it would not be higher or equal to this one because it's two classes combined for a double the class weight. Just something to keep in mind while styling. Okay, so now on to the last thing we're going to touch on before y'all will help me do some practice is everything's a box, or everything on the internet is a box. When we pull this up in our live server, we can see down here in this tab, this is our styles component. And this will tell us, there's a bug up here. This is going to tell you all the CSS styling behind the scene of what we're looking at. But we can see it's got this box right here. And when we hover over elements, it's a box around the element. So every element in HTML is basically a stacked box here. It's going to have the content in the middle, it's going to have padding around that, and then a border, and then margin. It's a lot to remember, but each one of these sizes matters and changes the way everything looks, but everything is going to be within this box of that element. Can't change it. You can make the box look like something different. You can make the box look like a circle, but it will still be a box in essence. So let's take a look at a better example, 8-bit box together. I'm going to replace this with this. And we can see, so I've got a style tag here. Interesting, I didn't bury it in a head or anything else, but I did throw a style tag, which is telling me I'm using this internal style here that I've identified right here, not using the style sheet anymore. Okay, so in this, I'm saying for the div tag, we're going to give a border that's 6 pixels thick, a solid border with this color. The height of this div is going to be 200 pixels. The margin is 20 pixels, padding 20 pixels, width 200 pixels. So what does all of that mean? Well, if we come over and look at our, let's see, it was being weird. Okay, so this is our div, the whole thing there. And we can see when we hover over our div, highlights much more than just this gray box, right? That orange part on the outside is our margin. So if we mess with our margin size, that's going to change how much white space is around this box. So I can change it here, but the really cool thing about this inspect tool in your browser is you can also just change it right here and play with the web page in your browser, mess with its CSS. It won't save it anywhere, but you can change things and check it out. So this margin that's around the outside. I don't like how much white space is around there, so I'm gonna decrease it. We're gonna put it down to like 10. Nice. So it made it a little smaller now around the outside. So now when we look at this margin around the outside of our element here, it's got 10 pixels around the outside. The border, 6 pixel thick border. We will wait for practice to try some different things there, but you can change. So we said it was solid. We can change all 3 of these things here. We could change the color. We could change how thick it is. We could give it a different value here for the line instead of being solid. But just recognize that each area, every single element you have will have all of these. So if you don't like having padding in your thing, in your element, you're going to have to set it to 0. So now there's no padding, essentially. I'm hovering over padding and it's gone. But each one of these areas in this box will be in all elements in your HTML. Any questions on this inspect here, how to mess around with the CSS right in here? Looking at the different values in your element, in your CSS. Okay, well, let's do a little bit of messing around now then. I'm not going to use this over here. We're just going to use VS Code. So we've made a square, right? How did we make this square? What properties here in our CSS is kind of important for making this square?
the pixels themselves and the definitions, I guess.
Yeah, so the pixels for sure. We can see that the height and width are the same, so that's got to be, the height and width of this box. But essentially, we made this square by drawing a solid border around this element. So this line right here is probably the most important part to visualizing our box here, because without this border being solid, it's going to be nothing. And once I refresh, because I took away. So now there's no box, right? No, wrong. There's still a box. You just can't see the border around the box anymore. So it still exists. But we have that border in there. Oh, I should add. That's fine. That adds that line around there for us. Makes that box. How would I make a rectangle then? What can I change to make a rectangle?
Increase the width.
Yeah, let's increase the width. And I'm gonna add a body tag around this because this is annoying me. Okay. I'm gonna refresh it so it knows. So let's bump this up to 500. Awesome, perfect. Made the box bigger because it made our element wider. So this is weird though, right? I said that divs are block elements. They take up the whole space in the whole browser. Why is it just stopping right here then? And is it not a block element anymore? What's going on? I mean, when I'm hovering over this, it kind of just shows it there, right? This is tricky though, because it still is a block element, but we're restricting the width with CSS. So nothing can go next to this still in regular HTML, but you can use CSS to move things around on the page. It's quite powerful and like magic. Okay, so now what's another, instead of a solid line, what kind of other lines can we use?
Dotted.
Dotted. I wonder if dotted's about, ooh, it looks like it might be. Yes, dotted is a value we can use, and it made now a dotted line border. So we can change that out. Let's adjust margin and padding and see its effects. We already took out padding. I hate padding so much in everything I do. So I remove padding all the time. Actually, that looks bad. Let's add like 5 pixels. And then the margin around it. Let's say I wanted a little more center. Let's go ahead and add like 60 pixels. So that pushes it over too. Makes it just a little bit more in the middle. So yeah, that all affects where this is placed on the web page. Some new colors. So this is kind of cool. You can just click this in VS Code and select a different color. It's kind of the cheer thing. Otherwise, you can find the, what is it, the hexadecimal code here to throw in. I'll do a lime green one. That's not lime green. That's an ugly green. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Now, how can I make a circle? So I said we can do anything with CSS, right? Just because this is a square right here doesn't mean that it has to actually be a square on the web page, right?
We do a border radius and set it to 100%
100%.
if you want. And let's see, border radius. Oh yeah, the width and height have to be the same.
Yeah, if we want a perfect circle. Let's Hello's out of the way, but that's okay. We'd probably do some more messing with maybe like padding or something.
Are you a wizard, Cisco?
No, padding doesn't work on that. Maybe text align. So I didn't know that either. I had to Google because there's
Mhm.
so many properties and values that you can use. But border radius defines the radii of the outer border edge. Basically, it rounds out. Let's take this less. Let's do just actually 10%. It just rounds out the corners of the box. So the higher the percentage we go, and you actually don't have to go 100%, you could just do 50%. But makes it just a little rounder. Google is great. Gives you all sorts of styling tips and tricks for sure. So let's see, we had this here, our circle. So now if I wanted to make it an oval, what would I need to change to make it an oval? I don't have to add anything. I just have to change one thing here to make an oval.
Height.
Height. Okay, yep, let's take it. Let's make it bigger. There's our oval. Perfect. So I'm not even gonna bother trying to get this in the middle of this circle because I am not a CSS master. I love to import third-party libraries that do it all for me. But y'all can feel free to, let's see, we have also in the README here, look at all the properties. So here are all the properties you can use in CSS and then what they do. So if you wanted to learn how to build from the absolute ground up, chains. Uh, uh, Anyways, interesting. You can find all sorts of different CSS properties there. And that is another section in the README that's for student exploration. Go ahead and click on that and just kind of look through. But that was it. A intro, very brief intro to HTML and CSS. Do we have any questions from what we went over today? All right, let me stop recording and we will go over our challenges.